In this module, we're going to discuss how to deploy the client endpoints. The goals of this module are that we will identify how are the different ways that I can deploy this software onto our endpoint systems, and also how do we actually do the deployment to the different clients, and then verify the success of the deployment. From EPO, we have two types of client deployment methods. We have the way that you can create the client deployment project, which has the different tasks for fixed or continuous. You can do a stop and uninstall, so we'll review that. We also have the client task catalog, where you can create your own client tasks to deploy any of the products from EPO, and the machines will then go to the closest repository and download and install the product. In this table, we give you the options that you have if you selected the product deployment project versus the client deployment task. For the client product deployment project, you have the ability to configure a fixed or continuous deployment. What we mean by fixed is this deployment will happen only that one time and for that one schedule. The continuous means that the task never expires, so that if you created the task and you set the schedule for it to run immediately, if I had any new computers that showed up in EPO and they received the conditions that defines that task should happen for them, then they will run that particular task because it never expired. You can use tags to select your target systems. You can schedule deployment. You can have it where the end users can postpone the deployment if you want to, and that's only on Windows. You have the option of run that task at every policy enforcement interval. That exists only in the product deployment project feature. I caution you on that because if you have where your policy enforcement intervals every 5 minutes, you need to realize that what it's going to do is download a few files every 5 minutes and try to run that task. So it's a good feature, but you have to think about how you're going to use that feature. You can see a historical snapshot of how all your different machines that need to get the deployment are receiving it. You can see the status of the machines, so you know whether or not they've actually completed it. Is it pending or did it fail? And then you could actually act on any of the client task objects with client tasks and EPO only in the client deployment task. So if you'll notice the 4 features, I should say, that are not available for the client deployment task that you have in the product deployment project, and also the product deployment project has where you cannot act on those tasks. You can only do that in the client task catalog. The workflow for creating the product deployment project is that first you go and select your menu software product deployment. You select the option to add the product deployment. You'll fill out all the different information, such as giving it the name and a description. Then you select whether or not it's going to be fixed deployment, and ideally we recommend that you only do that up to 500 systems. You add your packages, and one of the nice things about adding the packages with this feature is you can actually select the option to deploy if there's a new version of the product. When you look at the client deployment task, you cannot do that. So if you actually change the package in the master repository, you always have to go back and edit that task to select the new package. It will only remember the old package. Then our next step is to select which systems that you want it to be deployed to. You can select the option of run immediately, or you can set a different schedule. And then after that, wait for the machine to install the product and then report back to the EPO server. You can do the collect and send prompts from the McAfee agent status monitor locally on the machine if you're not getting any of the information. Or you can do an agent wake-up call, but we caution you on too many agent wake-up calls because you could accidentally create a denial of service attack on your EPO server. In this screen, we're showing you an example of a product deployment project. If you'll notice, the name we gave it is client. I can put a little description. The type we selected is fixed, and you'll see at the bottom we have that automatic deploy the latest version of the products. By default that is disabled, but you can go in and change that. Select Endpoint Security Platform for the first product that is going to be installed. You can select the language, the branch, you can add a command line, and then you can click the plus sign and you can add more products. The examples we have here is we show endpoint security firewall, the threat prevention, and the web control. I do want to mention that you don't necessarily have to select the endpoint security platform. If you selected any of the other features to be installed, they will automatically make that endpoint security platform install along with it. In the screen for the Select the Systems, you click the Select button, and this is where you can go and select your different systems that you want to deploy this product to. In this screen, we show you how do I go in and do my system selection. If you'll notice, you can use the system tree. You can also use queries, and then you can also see what are the selected systems that you selected for the deployment. In selecting your start time, your options are that you can select Run Immediately, Run it once, or run it daily. And when you select run once or daily, then you can actually set the actual time of day that you want it to be run at. And then you click your save. In selecting your start time, your options are that you can select Run Immediately, run it once, or run it daily. And when you select run once or daily, then you can actually set the actual time of day that you want it to be run at. And then you click your save. Here's an example of a client deployment task. We'll give it a unique name. You can give it a description. Note that you'll actually see the section where you could see how many affected systems that this would apply to, but that will happen after you actually assign the client task. The target platform always defaults to Windows, so if you were creating this for a different types of operating system, you would select that. If you accidentally select the wrong operating system for that particular executable, it will not install on that type of operating system. It recognizes that it cannot be installed. In this example, we are selecting all the features to be installed at the same time. I do want to remind you that you don't have to install all the features at the same time. For example, if I did not really want to employ the security firewall at this time because I'm using the host intrusion prevention firewall, you don't have to select that. In fact, to be honest with you, if you have HIPs still installed and the policies are still enforced for the firewall and host intrusion prevention, the policies for the ENS product will be ignored. After you created your client deployment task, in the utility they've added a nice little helpful link where all you have to do is click Assign next to your task, and you can assign it in the system tree of EPO. When you assign the task, you could set the schedule for that task, and then when you click the next button, you'll see your summary screen, and at that point you can save your task. You have the option of, after you assign any task or any policy, you can actually go into the system tree, select your systems, and do an agent wake-up call. Or in this case, you're clicking the button that just says Wake Up Agents. It's still the same thing as an agent wake-up call. I do want to caution you again on the fact that you don't do this to a large number of systems, because it would really hurt your EPO server if you do an agent wake-up call in that manner, because it will have the potential of creating a denial of service attack on your EPO server. There's more than one way to verify the client deployment. One way is that you can run queries that would select the information as to what products are installed on your different systems, or I can actually go into the system tree, I can find my system, click on that machine, and I can look at the different properties of that machine by clicking on the Products tab, and in that Products tab will show you all of the products that are installed on that particular machine. On the system itself, you can look at the services by noting you have the McAfee Agent Backwards Compatibility Service. That will communicate to any other of the different products that might be still running on your system that we might have to have some backward compatibility for that legacy product. You also have the McAfee Agent Common Services that hosts multiple McAfee Agent services such as peer-to-peer, wake-up, relay server. So that all has to do with the McAfee Agent. We also have the McAfee Agent service that does all the property collection, policy enforcement, scheduling the tasks, the agent-to-server communication, and if you have an update needs to happen. Then you have the McAfee Service Controller, which manages everything having to do with the solution services. We have a McAfee Validation Trust Protection Service that provides a protection of our different products. It's very important to have this because it will prevent anything from actually hindering our different applications. And so you're not really, please do not stop that service unless you really have to. We have a few legacy products that cannot coexist along with ENS. In fact, many times when you install the ENS, it will actually uninstall the previous product. So for example, if you had VirusScan and SiteAdvisor both installed, well, that web control will remove both of them, even though you're not installing the threat prevention. If VirusScan is installed, the ENS web control will still remove the VirusScan. If you have the threat prevention of ENS installed, you actually will still have SiteAdvisor still installed on the system, but it will not be functional. And you may not actually be able to remove it. So we do have a removal tool that you can get if you'll refer to the KB article 79933. If you upgrade from any previous versions of ENS, just note that when you go in and you add the packages in the master repository, you will have the packages for both the previous versions, so it gives you the ability to be able to uninstall those if the upgrade does not work. But when you add the extensions will always overwrite the pre-existing extensions. Now the 10.5 extensions will be capable of managing any of your previous versions of ENS clients, and so you don't have to really worry about that. But the features that are not available on those clients will just not be addressed. To have where your products are updated in a timely manner, you need to make sure that you do have a product update task. These client tasks are still created in the client task catalog. The idea is you should have at least a daily product update task so that your machines will always have the latest DATs and signatures installed so that they will always be ready, they'll always be fully protected. When you have a new installation, we do not have the DATs installed, we call that the security content, but at the end of the installation, the first thing that it does after it finishes is it does do an update. But you need to make sure that that happens every day. Now, the one update that is installed with the 10.5 installation package is the McAfee Host Intrusion Prevention Content version 8.0.0.7364. That is required for our host IPS, and it does add support for all the new digital signatures that are used by the endpoint security version 10.5. Check your understanding. Multiple choice. You want to act on or manage client task objects and tasks created with EPO versions prior to version 5.0. Which product deployment method best meets your needs? Is it a client deployment task or a product deployment project? The answer is client deployment task. Check your understanding, true or false. When creating a client task, a description is mandatory. Is this true or false? If you answered false, you are correct. So the key points that we want to mention and review is you can deploy the client package to your machines using the product deployment page or a client task catalog, where you can create your deployment tasks from there. I can deploy threat prevention, I can deploy firewall, I can deploy the web control individually, or I can deploy them all at the same time. Just remember, if I did just the threat prevention, I can come back later and add the firewall, and I can come back later and add the web control. To verify my clients were successfully deployed, I can go in and look at the machines in the system tree by clicking on the particular system and select the products. Also remember that you can create a query. After you have deployed your ENS clients, make sure that you do create your daily update tasks, product update tasks, so that they can make sure that the security content on your clients is updated every day if needed.